The next presenter today is Dr. Sergey Luchkin from the Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology in Moscow in Russia. He has a background in high temperature superconductors from the Research Institute of Inorganic Materials in Russia, followed by participation in a Marie Curie project called Nanomotion here in the University of Aveiro, where he studied lithium diffusion in lithium-ion batteries by scanning probe microscopy techniques, where he also did his PhD in this area, I think. And then today he will be talking to us on nanoscale imaging of functional properties of perovskite solar cells using atomic force microscopy. So a big welcome to you, please.
Thank you for introduction, Duncan. Good afternoon, everybody. And as you already read the title, I will go to the next slide. So here's the outlook of my talk. I will first briefly introduce hybrid halide perovskite solar cells. It is actually a very hot, it's been a very hot topic for already a decade, but still I think it needs introduction. And then I will go to description of our experimental setup and two case studies of how we study functional properties and also related to degradation of solar cells, because this is the main issue that hinders the commercialization. So, introduction. Halide perovskite solar cells became a hot topic in 2009 when a group of Miyosaka published a seminal paper where they introduced methylammonium lead halide perovskite as a dye in dye-sensitized solar cells. And they showed that this dye, this perovskite material, actually exhibit photovoltaic properties, and it can be used as photoabsorber. And in the first cell, it demonstrated photovoltaic phot conversion efficiency of about 3.9%, and since then it demonstrated very quick rise to more than 25% today, and it attracted very high attention, very broad attention from Materials Research Society and from Photovoltaic Society. So this is a typical perovskite structure where a cation may be organic cation, methylammonium, formamidinium are most widely used cations. It may be hydrazinium, or it may be inorganic such as cesium. B cation is usually lead, or it may be substituted by tin. And X9 is a halide anion. It is typically iodine or bromine. It may be also chlorine. And this material possesses very tunable optoelectronic properties, because as you can see here, by simple substitution of halide anion, we can change band gap in a very wide range, in this case from 1.5 to 2.7 electron volts, which is very promising for tandem solar cells, because we can optimize band gaps of different absorbers and receive very high phot conversion efficiency. It is also very promising for different photodetectors, photodetector arrays, and other photovoltaic applications. For example, today mixed halide perovskites on top of silicon solar cell. This is tandem perovskite silicon solar cell. Its efficiency already approaching 30%. Well, these are very exciting results, but they are not commercialized yet. On the positive side, we have high efficiency, like more than 25% already on single junction solar cells, and approaching 30% in tandem solar cells. This material is defect tolerant, and it can be produced by low temperature chemical processing. This is relatively cheap technology, and it allows to produce low-cost devices. But as I said, it's not commercialized yet, and the main reason is very fast degradation. And there are two main degradations. First is environmental degradation. It degrades from contact with atmospheric oxygen and water, but it's actually not a big deal because solar cell may be properly encapsulated and isolated from atmosphere. Moreover, this is a photoabsorber layer which is sandwiched between charge transport layers, so it has no direct contact to atmosphere. The worst case is that it also prone to operational degradation, so it degrades from elevated temperatures like 60 degrees, from illumination and from electric field. All these operational parameters which are inherent to solar cells, and this is because this perovskite is thermodynamically. So researchers are trying to stabilize these materials, and there are two general strategies to do this. First is stabilization of perovskite layer itself, like this is internal stabilization, and well, the main approach is additive engineering. In general, it may be a solvent formulation, different deposition methods, playing with stoichiometry of different components. And the second method to stabilize solar cell is stabilize it by interface engineering and device architecture. So using different charge transport layers, additional buffer layers to prevent diffusion of decomposition products into charge transfer layers, and so on. And here's a typical example of light-induced degradation of methylammonium lead iodide, the most studied perovskite material. In the inset, you can see a fresh surface of perovskite. This is AFM, this is a CM image. And on big scans, this is surface after degradation, after 300 hours of degradation. Well, actually light soaking, it was exposed to one sun illumination. And you can see that roughness increased dramatically, iodine to lead ratio decreased dramatically, and you can see all other data that structure and properties changed a lot during the short exposure to photon flux. And resulting products are lead and lead iodide. So usually a whole set of different experimental techniques is used to study these materials and their degradation, but I will focus on implementation of atomic force microscopy. Of course, it was used together with other methods, but the focus of this presentation is at AFM. And this is a typical reaction of decomposition of photochemical decomposition. So this perovskite material decomposed to lead iodide, metallic lead, molecular iodine, and other volatile species like methylammonium iodide. Now, this I will show our experimental setups. We do experiments ex situ and in situ. Ex situ experiment starts with degradation. So this is a degradation chamber installed in an argon-free glove box. There is a solar simulator which shines to this chamber, to this racks, where solar cells or parts of solar cells, like different layers which are deposited on glass or glass situ, they're placed here and stored for a certain amount of time. After that, it's transferred to another glove box. We have several glove box lines with different equipment in order to measure properties and not to expose samples to atmosphere. This glove box with AFM, and we measure properties of this degraded samples. And second setup is in situ setup. We can do certain degradation experiments inside the AFM directly. So using only one sample, we can observe dynamic of degradation and at least the very first step of degradation, how degradation starts and what nucleates in surface of solar cell. There are different options, for example, heating option, applying of electric field, and also illumination. This illumination setup, well, let's look at the next slide. I will focus more on in situ photo degradation. So I will show in more details this illumination setup. In our firm, we have two lasers. One is detection laser, which is red. So you can see it here on optical image on top of cantilever. And another blue laser is used for photothermal excitation. So it shines at the base of cantilever and drives the vibrations. But we can move it to the front of cantilever and shine light on the sample locally. And in this case, we have to use a top visual cantilever. So this is a cantilever with a needle which is protruding to the front. So we can shine light exactly where the needle is, so it's not shaded by the lever. And in this way, we can shine light, we can scan and measure what's happening on the surface. So now we move to the first case study, which is the effect of solution composition of stability of methylammonium lead iodide. And particularly, we started to study effect of lead iodide non-stoichiometry on efficiency and stability of methylammonium lead iodide perovskite, because in literature there are controversial data. Some authors claim that it increases efficiency and stability, other claims that it the opposite. So, and we prepared solar cells. So this is a solar cell architecture without excess of lead iodide. So this is stoichiometric methylammonium lead iodide, and with 15% excess of lead iodide. And as you can see, so this is photoconversion efficiency, and color is coding time of light slogging, like exposure to solar illumination. And you can see that in one case, cell with excessive lead iodide degrades pretty fast, and in another case, it is much more stable actually. And the difference is solvent composition from which it was deposited. It was deposited by spin coating from DMF or DMF with an NMP solution. And NMP has high boiling temperature than DMF, and after spin coating, there is a certain amount of NMP trapped inside MAPI layer. So we will focus on this MAPI. And here we placed a sample inside AFM, shine light on it, and start scanning. So here's topography image, here is surface potential image, and this is stoichiometric MAPI in DMF solution. So I will play a movie. We can see how surface topography and surface potential evolves with time of illumination. So this is hours here, like this is 60 hours of illumination. You can see that grains start to disappear. And if you remember a few slides ago, I showed you the typical reaction of decomposition. It decomposes with formation of volatile products, which leaves a sample surface. And this is exactly what we see here. Surface potential in this case is flattened. It's not really, so from surface potential, we can calculate work function. And it's not really correct to flatten surface potential data. But in this case, we are looking for photochemical phenomena, not for photophysical. And this is photoabsorber, this is semiconductor, and it of course possesses very strong photophysical response to illumination. I will show you later. And I just removed this photophysical effects to focus on photochemical. Now, this is the same MAPI but deposited from DMF and NMP, just 15% of NMP solution. You can see it already has different morphology and some activity along grain boundaries. Probably NMP somehow oscillates grain boundaries, and the same illumination, the same experimental conditions, but the film is much more stable than from DMF solution. We can see it's a deposit, but there is no volatilization of decomposition products. Okay, now MAPI with excessive lead iodide in DMF solution without NMP. Yeah, let's play. So we can see that well, again, some grains start to disappear. There are formation of volatile products, but not as severe as in stoichiometric MAPI. But additionally, we can see a very strong formation of new grains, which is probably according to XRD's lead or lead iodide. And this sample is fastest to degrade. And this degradation is probably caused by these new grains, which pierce through interfaces of charge transport layers. All these devices are very, very thin. This MAPI layer is probably 300 to 500 nanometers thick, and charge transport layers is much thicker, is much thinner. So, yeah. And this is MAPI, the same sample with excessive lead iodide in the DMF-NMP solution. Again, a bit different surface morphology, no volatilization at all, no empty grains appear, but we still can see on both topography and surface potential image formation of new grains, but they are not as tall as on previous example and not as big. And this sample is the most stable. Now, as I said before, I will show you what I flattened out from previous surface potential images. This is the photophysical effect. So this is topography of the sample, and this is surface potential. The same scan. On the top part, we scanned in dark conditions, and then we switched on the light laser, and you can see that there is a step on surface potential image. And if you don't flatten this this one, then while playing such movies, dynamic range will be too wide to note all these tiny differences which appears from the chemical phenomena. Okay, and the origin of this step is band bending caused by super band gap elimination. We use 405 nanometers wavelength laser, and energy of photon is higher than the band gap, so it excites electron from valence band to conductive band. It goes to diffuse the surface and reduce band bending. And sign of this step, whether it increases or decreases surface potential after elimination, can give us a hint about type of conductivity of semiconductor, whether it's N-type or Pi-type. Of course, it's not without limitations, because we have to know in advance whether its surface is depleted, accumulated, or inverted state, but still we can do it. Here is, for example, measurements made on lateral device. This is glass with perovskite layer deposit on it and 2 gold electrodes. And when we apply voltage between 2 gold electrodes, halide ions start to diffuse, to migrate inside this film. They are very mobile, and on this in situ imaging, you can see a wave of material and depleted of material from negative electrode and accumulation near positive electrode. This is halide migration, and the perovskite there becomes self-doped from this side. Is N-type doped, this is Pi-type doped, and when we shine a line on material, you can see that there is different sign of step in potential. So, and this effect was removed from movies. Now, the second case is phase segregation in mixed halide perovskite materials. So, mixed halide perovskites, they're very good materials for tandem solar cells with silicon, with 6 solar cells, because by partial substitution of halide and ion, we can tune band gap to obtain the maximum photocommercial efficiency. But the actual photoconversion efficiency and, well, in this case, open circuit voltage of the cell was lower than expected, than calculated from initial parameters. And this effect was studied by many research groups, and it was concluded that it was caused by light-induced light phase segregation. So under illumination, this mixed phase splits into iodine-rich and bromine-rich phases. And that's our data from IFM. This is phase overlaid on topography. And after light exposure, you can see a significant difference. But before, there were a lot of mechanisms proposed to explain this effect, but none of them was sufficiently confirmed by experimental results. And we made our experiments, of course, first of all. So this was a perovskite that we studied. This is mixed iodine bromine with inorganic cesium. And we showed by XRD and by PL and by other macroscopic experiments that after light and illumination, it indeed splits into two phases. So, this single mixed phase split into iodine-rich and bromine-rich phases. So this is XRD, this is PL intensity. And we also made in situ experiments inside the AFM, shine light on the sample and observed changes. So this is topography image, and this is tapping phase image. In this case, we observed the most contrast from tapping phase, and that's why we use it here. And what we observed that, well, formation of a new phase which started along grain boundaries actually. So this starts to grow, and this is how iodine ions are expelled from grain interior to grain boundaries and form new phase here. So and it forms cubic eye-rich phase. Now, how do you know that this is actually iodine-rich and not bromine-rich? Well, first of all, we know that we prepared several reference samples like cesium lead iodides, cesium lead bromides, not mixed, measured their surface potential, and then measured surface potential on our degraded sample. And well, we saw that these new regions, they have a bit lower surface potential than the old ones. And comparing to reference sample, we concluded that this is iodine rich. It was also supported by computer simulation and by the fact that iodine oxidation is more energy efficient than bromine oxidation. So it allowed us to come up with to propose this mechanism. So at stage A, as photon hit the perovskite material, it produces electron and hole charge carriers, and the hole may be trapped by halide anion. Halide anion is oxidized, and this oxidized anion is no more energy efficient, so it increases free energy of grain, and it is expelled to grain boundary. It also produces a metallic lead, which is also expelled to grain boundary, and then they recombined inside at the grain boundaries, which is also well-known process like recombination of the species and formation of this perovskite material from its decomposition product. So it may decompose and under illumination and then compose back into perovskite in dark condition. And in the end, we have iodine-rich phase along grain boundaries and bromine-rich phase along grain bulk. We also obtained interesting results which we didn't really develop, didn't really dig into this direction. But here you can see the same material. This is topography, and this is photocurrent. So this is dark current, and this is current under illumination. And you can see that there is high current along grain boundaries. So it means that there is built-in electric field. Well, actually, it doesn't mean that there is built-in electric field, but earlier we observed the same effect in cesium lead bromide perovskite after annealing. So this is topography, this is photocurrent. So I'm sorry for different color schemes, they are from different papers. And we observed that after certain thermal treatment, grain boundaries become more conductive than grain interior. And we measured surface potential and observed also, so this is already converted to work function, that grain boundaries possess high work function, which means that there is a lateral built-in electric field inside perovskite material. So we have solar cell, which has out-of-plane electric field between charge transport layers, which produces actually open circuit voltage. But it also has built-in electric field in plane inside this photoabsorber layer. And in this case, electrons and holes, they are split inside, and electrons preferably travel through grain boundaries and hole through grains, which reduces their combination and losses. And it means that efficiency of photo conversion from cesium lead bromide with this electronic structure should be higher than from cesium lead bromide without thermal treatment and without this structure. And when we assemble devices, we exactly receive the same this result. So perovskite solar cell based on this cesium lead bromide with this electronic structure demonstrated 30% high efficiency. And probably in case of this mixed halide perovskites with the same current distribution, like enhanced photocurrent along grain boundaries, we also have similar surface potential. Unfortunately, we didn't measure it for this sample. And there is also built-in electric field, which additionally facilitate iodine migration and splitting at grain boundaries, or it probably induce more intensive oxidation of iodine at grain boundaries. So here is it was the last effective slide. I thank my collaborators and colleagues who contributed to this work, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for a very clear talk. The floor is now open for questions, if anybody has a question. If you have a question, please just speak.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, please, Igor.
Yes, it's very interesting activity and very interesting application of the microscopy technique for investigation physical process. Yes. Okay. I have a question about how it is, what is microscopy used and how you organize. Maybe you say at the beginning you measure same time you radiate and measure the pattern, or you are separate this process.
So
measure how in situ or
yes, it was in situ, and so for example here there is in situ measurements under electric bias, and here yes it's in situ, and I will show you.
Yes, the first slide. You exactly in this in any case it's different because your touch, yes, in this case is not radiated exactly in on the tip, yes or not?
But it radiates exactly at the tip because we use top visual probes with a tip which is not hidden below a lever.
Yes, this is I understand, but in any case it's some it's not transparent tip, yes, it's not, this is silicon, yes.
Yes, but the very end of the tip is so thin that well, light is coming to the sample.
This is commercial, or it's your construct?
Well, this is commercial.
Additional part laser radiation.
No. This is commercial.
This is laser. Additional laser beam is included to microscope.
Well,
yes?
Yeah, it was built in microscope. It is so-called blue drive system, which well, if we move this, well, here, this principle of how properly should we use this laser. It shines on the base of cantilever and driven at certain frequency that shake only cantilever. So it's very nice resonance, but we can move it here. It's not like a standard feature of the microscope, but you can go inside into programming and.
No, as I understand, you use two lasers.
What?
You use two lasers, yes?
Yeah, two lasers.
Two lasers, yes. But
yeah,
microscope have two lasers, yes?
Yeah, it has two lasers,
Uh-huh.
and know that you see this is optical image. So this is detection laser, this is excitation laser, and it's quite small because it's focused through optics. But when you shine light on the sample, it broadens because it defocuses. So we can measure size of this spot and calculate power density because we know power at which laser is shining. So we can also control this power by applying certain voltage to this laser.
Another question: how you control temperature of surface?
Well,
Maybe you have additional temperature here.
This is a good question. I actually cannot control temperature in this case, but this perovskite layer is quite thin, and below we have ITO, which is conductive transparent oxide layer, and this is a good heat sink. So there is a big, well, relatively big compared to illumination area sample, which is, well, compared to this spot, it is massive, and it sinks and radiates this heating. So I suppose that heating is not that important here. And also we made ex situ experiments with heated sample, like degraded from temperature, and it has different mechanism. So it doesn't produce volatile species. So what we observed here is exactly a mechanism that is proposed for photo-induced degradation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions? Anybody? In that case, thank you very much for your presentation.